section 4, and it's titled The Changing Face of America. So at the end of the 20th century, the American population has grown more diverse in terms of ethnic background as well as age. So I'd like to explain a few modern phenomena. The first one is urban flight. This is the movement of people from cities to the suburbs. And a main reason for this is the suburbs post-World War II were really the more desirable place to live. I mean, where do you want to live? Crowded, noisy, smelly inner city, or comfortable, quiet, safe neighborhood? And so, many people who could began to move out of the cities and commute in. As a result, also, businesses followed these skilled workers, these affluent individuals, to the suburbs. And so we wind up with places like Hendersonville, where you could reasonably commute into an urban center, but you can live surrounded by trees and nature. Now, of course, post-World War II, this urban flight situation happened, left many inner cities impoverished, and then moving forward to the present day, many cities have undergone urban renewal projects. And so that many of these dilapidated areas are now super trendy. Think about 7th Avenue in Hendersonville. What's going on there? Old industrial business buildings are becoming what? Breweries, bike shops, concert venues, arcades, restaurants, blah, 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 blah. That's called gentrification. It's a process that's happening in my neighborhood where we just bought a house for X amount. In 5 years, that same house will likely be worth far more. Why? Because it seems to be the thing to do is to buy homes for cheap, flip them, and sell them to people now fleeing the urban center of Hendersonville. Again, this is a process called gentrification. And it's got an ironic twist to it. It actually leads to a decline in the economic base of many urban areas. Why? Because, you don't need an Acusta manufacturing. You don't need a DuPont manufacturing in a gentrified area. What do you need? You need a dialysis center. Yeah. You need retirement homes. You need 55-plus communities. You need breweries. You need restaurants. You need concert venues. You need entertainment for people who are retiring into an area and have the means to buy in the area for an increased price. So it actually results in the decline of economic base. So what did Acusta become? Well, it's in the process of becoming shopping centers, breweries, Starbucks, restaurants, venues, etc. Probably a dialysis center thrown in for good measure. Since we live in a suburban area, though it's actually in the process of becoming an urban area, in fact, the home we just bought in, I looked at the zoning map, and it's in what's called an urban transformation process, that over the next 10 years, what you live in now may be considered suburban, will soon be considered urban, as Asheville sprawls outward. And so this trend kind of, from the 1990s forward, partly due to technology, is that more people are telecommuting. So if you want to live in a gentrified area, that means you're not going to have access to tons and tons and tons of manufacturing. But what are you going to have access to? Shops and breweries and concert venues and restaurants and cute little places to get baked goods. Yeah. But what are you going to do for work in that type of place? Because unless you're the business owner, making cute little baked goods is not a sustainable career opportunity. Unless you're the business owner. So in gentrified areas, you get people who telecommute. And in fact, you'll find and you'll meet an increasing number of people in this area that are telecommuting. Why? Because the careers they are working in don't exist in this area because of gentrification. So if you want to stay in the area and you want to work in a lucrative career, this might be your opportunity. And so suburbs and cities actually compete for businesses to increase tax revenue. Just think about the Amazon debacle where they were saying, okay, we might locate here, what can you give us? We might locate here, what can you give us?
Television begins to exert.
Another fact that we will deal with and grapple with more as we age is that we can expect to live longer. And that's great. I for one am excited. And hope to maintain my health and my positive outlook on life. And I hope to maintain that for a very long time. I mean, I'd like to live past 100. And I'd like to be healthy, and I'd like to be, still moderately sane by that point and have my cognitive faculties and be able to still do stuff. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means at 65, I will be eligible for Medicare. And that for the next 35 years, I'll have free health care. At 65, I'll be eligible for Social Security. And if I live to 100, for the next 35 years, I'll have a built-in retirement. Now, granted, I pay into that system, and I've been paying into that system ever since I was 16. But my point is, if there's more people like me that plan on living to 100 or longer, well, that gets expensive. So by 2030, 1 out of every 5 Americans is expected to be over the age of 65. So when we talk about the ethnic changes, in our lifetime, Latinos will outnumber whites. But also in our lifetime, it's possible that old people will outnumber young people.
No.
I mean, just being real with you. And by the time I'm an old person, I will be in the majority. And the reality is that's already true where we live because of gentrification. Now, these programs that pay for our elderly, and someday you, so don't get snooty about it, it will someday be you, are becoming an increasing amount of our federal budget. And it's likely that the elderly will outpace the military in federal spending in our lifetimes. Again, Social Security will possibly have to be restructured. Medicare will possibly have to be restructured because just the grim reality is that by the time you get to qualify for those benefits, there will be too many of you to pay for. And so that's just something that we have to deal with. Here's a little infographic to help. The average life expectancy in 1980, 74 years. By 2010, up to 79. I get that a 5-year difference doesn't sound like a whole lot, but when you're talking about a population of 300 million people, that's substantial. So when we think about the average number of people per household, 1980, 2.75, 2010, 2.58. I know there's no such thing as 0.58 of a human. However, again, when you're averaging over a population of 300 million, what does that mean? That means we're having fewer babies and we are living longer. What does that mean? It means old people already outnumber young people in Henderson County, but soon this will be a national reality. A national reality. So now let's talk about the ethnic changes in our country. Our population is still growing, although because of that demographic shift, our population has actually begun to stabilize. But while the birth rate has stabilized, we have continued to grow as a population through immigration. And roughly 2,000 people enter this country legally every single day. And then roughly 4,000 to 10,000 people enter this country illegally every single day. By the early 1990s, there were roughly 3.2 million undocumented immigrants living among us. Now the number is roughly triple that. And so immigrants from more than 40 countries are here in this photograph taking the oath of allegiance to become United States citizens. This photograph was taken in 2013. And so the question is, if we are receiving upwards to 12,000 people every single day coming into this country, what can we do about it? And so the debate about, number one, is how many should we allow legally? Number two is, if we accept the reality that people are coming in, and that's a complicated phenomenon, but yes, if we accept the reality that people are coming to this country by the tens of thousands daily, then the question is, what do we do? One proposal, and this was particular to California, was Prop 187. And the idea was cutting education and health benefits to undocumented immigrants. And what we wound up with was a phenomena where undocumented immigrants pay into a system but receive no benefits as a result. Can you imagine that? Okay, you pay your sales tax, you pay your property tax, and yes, undocumented immigrants pay income taxes as part of the process of becoming documented citizens. And so you get this net difference of hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue that undocumented immigrants are paying in. And those same hundreds of billions of dollars of revenue that are being paid on the behalf of undocumented immigrants don't help them. Because Prop 187 cuts those services that our taxes pay for folks who are living here undocumented. So in the 1990s, about 45% of immigrants were coming from the Western Hemisphere, about 30% from Asia. But the proportion of non-Latino whites to minorities is expected to continue to shrink. So what that means is that whites will become a minority in our country within our lifetime. Okay, so I want to look at these sources of immigration, since I was talking about the changing trend here. You notice that over half, roughly 55.5% of immigrants are coming to the United States from the Americas, particular from South and Central American countries. Still coming from Europe, roughly 30% still coming from Asia, but the lion's share coming from the Americas. Now, in regards to Native Americans, many Native Americans are still struggling, with some of the highest levels of poverty, suicide, alcoholism, much higher than that of white Americans. The issue of gambling on reservations has remained controversial, but in many cases, at least, for the case of the Cherokee, has become the economic base of that community. And they can continue to operate their casino legally because they have autonomy. Now, environmental issues are obviously a major concern, and I've got a lesson coming up on that soon. It's a global issue. Many hope that this will be the issue that unites our planet around a common cause. Other continuing problems, poverty, terrorism, and the hope, I guess, if I can leave you on a hopeful note here, is that maybe, like Robert Kennedy once said, we can work together in the final analysis and tackle these common problems and realize that these are problems that affect us all. And I wanted to catch you up to date, at least with the previous administration's plan on climate change. With the EPA regulatory goals were to speed up the process of implementing regulations on greenhouse gas emissions, to issue flexible regulations for individual states to reduce emissions, to reduce the use of hydrofluorocarbons, and to promote scientific research and development, to work with the states and the federal government to improve the management of the EPA. And this can be contrasted with the current administration. We can talk about that more later. But the hope, I guess, with our country moving forward, facing the threat of climate change, is that we can move to a more sustainable model of energy production, like wind, like solar, like so many other ways of generating electricity that don't consume non-renewable resources. Okay.